It's Magic 107.5, 97.5, the real sound of Atlanta. Ryan Cameron, Uncensored, Ambassador Andrew Young in the building. I am like honored to be sitting here talking with you. Sam, I know you've got something to ask him.
Absolutely. So, first off, thank you for coming in today. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I wanted to ask, like, we see the buildings that have your name on it all around the city. You have the street names after you, but I really want to ask about the importance and how special it is for you and your brother to have their name on the YMCA here in the city. How does that make you feel?
Well, the YMCA makes me feel very good because I grew up in the YMCA. My mother worked next door to the YMCA in New Orleans. But the YMCA here, Martin Luther King lived 3 blocks up Auburn Avenue from the Butler Street YMCA. Almost everybody, Maynard Jackson, tried to play basketball in that YMCA, in the Butler Street YMCA. That the YMCA has raised a lot of us. The first time I came to Atlanta to a YMCA conference. It must have been about 1946. And actually, to show how far we've come, I ran out of the Y to Auburn Avenue because the Ku Klux Klan was parading down Auburn Avenue.
Really?
And I called home and I said, Mama, I just saw the Ku Klux Klan. She said, you get to the train station to catch the train out of here tonight and come back home. See? But it was, we've come a long way. But I am convinced that the reason we have made it is Martin Luther King Jr. And he's a product of Atlanta. He was educated in our public schools, Booker T. Washington High School, Morehouse College, and he not only helped to bring me here, but almost everybody else that's here is here because of what he did to make this a better place. And that's why I hope we will turn out and march to the Peace Park. That's we'll be leaving about 10 o'clock Saturday morning. And it's one small way to say thank you and to look around at each other and realize that none of us would be who we are and what we are if it hadn't been for his life and his belief in changing the world without violence.
Now, with the unveiling of the statue on the 1st, what emotions, comes back to you, when that veil actually is pulled back and you see the statue and everything?
Well, I must confess that I ain't much into statues. and they're there for the future. But
Right.
when they pulled the thing off my statue downtown here some years ago,
What was your first thought?
well, it's 8 feet tall and good looking. I can't walk for anymore. That's all I ever wanted to be.
Perfect.
Now, whether it looks like me or not, you decide.
I love it.
But
Absolutely
if people
love
remember me that way, I'm all right.
it. Have you talked to President Jimmy Carter?
I went down there about a month ago and had a good talk with him, with he and Mrs. Carter, and his son Jeff was there, who goes down there just about every week to be with him and see him, and we didn't say much, but he laughed a lot.
Right.
He was happy. He wasn't sick. He wasn't ailing. And he was, you got a sense that when he said that he didn't want to go into the hospital anymore, he wanted a hospice at home, people thought he was going to die any minute. Because that's what hospice is.
Right. But that was his choice, though.
But his choice was that I don't want to go to the hospital when I am ready to pass. I want to be home with people who love me
Right.
and with my wife. And in fact, I came to the conclusion that neither one of them seem to be wanting to go anywhere because they don't want to go alone.
Right.
And whenever one's ready to go, the other one will probably go too.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to laugh, to be able to enjoy your own home cooked food, and there's some of the people who are working with him as government employees who have been with him since he was in the White House.
And I definitely want to mention because President Carter was actually able to make you a global ambassador. And you've seen so many countries, you've represented us on a global scale numerous times. But what is one place where you would recommend someone from Atlanta who may have never ever left Fulton County, Clayco, DeKalb County that they have to see?
Well, you know, um, I don't know whether you can do it now, but when I was growing up, um, we used to drive everywhere. And of course, gas was just 33 cents a gallon. But we drove to, I drove up to Howard University to my father's college graduation reunion. I drove out to California for something else. I forget what it was. But I think I have enjoyed my trips, and I think I've been to every state but one, and that's South Dakota. There's nothing wrong with South Dakota, but I just haven't been able to. That's the one place I've bypassed, and I love this country, and I know it's easy to focus on all that's wrong with it, but when you've been anywhere else, some of my grandchildren were talking about, I'm going to move to so and so and so and so and so and so. And I said, I've been there and I enjoyed it for a while, but in 2 weeks I was ready to come back to Atlanta.
Ain't no place like home. Ain't no place like home. I want to wrap this up real quick. What's one key advice if you can talk to all of the future black political leaders out there or people who want to go into politics at this point in the game?
Well, I'd say you have to start working with a team or an organization. That you need to be active in your church. You need to be active in the community organization. You need to be a representative of your block and go to community meetings. Most people went to school here somewhere, and if you went to any of these schools, when they have a reunion, show up and let people know how you're doing, because you didn't make it alone. None of us have ever made it by ourselves. And I see people every day, and they come up to me nowadays, and they say, yeah, my grandmama told me she campaigned for you. See? And I remember kids who went to school with all four of my kids went to school here in Atlanta, and Atlanta Public Schools.
Right.
And so we are a family, and we're a family that goes all over the world. And anywhere I go, I run into somebody from Atlanta. They're doing something to make us proud.
Nice.
But there again, coming back, that's all because of what Martin Luther King did.
Right.
And we don't know maybe, but when he went to Montgomery, he hadn't even gotten started good in the bus boycott before they bombed his house. And his baby, Yolanda, was in the baby carriage in the front bedroom, and her mother had just picked her up and taken her back to the kitchen to get her a fresh bottle of milk.
Wow.
So then he was sued. for telling the truth by the, I forget what the Montgomery Advertiser.
Okay.
And they took what little property he had away from him. It wasn't much but a car. But he went to New York to sign a book that he'd written. And some crazy black lady came up and stabbed him in the chest with a letter opener.
I remember that story. Yeah.
And he recovered from that, only to come back to Atlanta and try to get settled. And in the first thing he did, he was swept up by the police, this time in DeKalb County. Remember, there were no black policemen back then.
Right.
And they took him out of the line, took him to DeKalb County, drove him in the middle of the night to Reedsville. Well, that's one hell of a ride. Reedsville is about 300 miles.
Wow.
And there were no expressways then. So he's in the back of a paddy wagon with nothing but him and a German Shepherd. And every time he'd roll or they'd go around a curve, he'd roll toward the German Shepherd. The German Shepherd would growl. Well, fortunately, he'd had a German Shepherd when he was a little boy. And so he wasn't afraid of the dog. But being alone with a dog for 6 hours,
Yeah. That's
was
intimidating.
enough to give you a nervous breakdown. But he was cool, and because he kept the dog cool. And so he comes back, and we start in Atlanta, and everybody says that civil rights movement is dead. New York Times wrote the article, and then Fred Shuttlesworth came over here and said, "You need to come help me in Birmingham." Now, that's what I say to young people who say things are no better now than they were then. I said, bull.
Right. Listen, we've got the Honorable Ambassador Andrew Young. We're going to talk more off air, but I want to thank you on behalf of myself, Sam, Ryan Cameron Uncensored, and everybody out there in Atlanta. We thank you.
Well, let me thank you, because we couldn't have made it without black radio. You're the voice of the nation.
Thank you.
And I also say that to anybody running for anything, that put some of your money in black radio.
You heard him. You heard him. Let's run it. Listen, it's Ryan Cameron Uncensored. It's Magic 107.5, 97.5, the real sound of Atlanta.